when you demonstrate the willingness to help your employees to maintain and pursue their efforts, you're actually leading with emotional intelligence. You're leading with that empathy that is one of the hallmarks of having high emotional intelligence. Something that is not, I would say, natural, but also something that is not easy to learn. It takes time, it takes personal education and continued education, honing your craft of soft skills to be a better in servant leadership. And that brings me to who I'm going to talk about today, my current manager at Siemens, who is unlike a lot of the managers at Siemens because not only is he technical, but he's a great communicator. A lot of times, what I see is when the person is very technical, they're a lot of times more reclusive. They a lot of times are kind of in their shell and they don't come out to show that empathy, to show active listening, to show the communication skills necessary to be a servant leader, not an authoritarian leader. And I think he really exhibits servant leadership and high emotional intelligence. According to Sarah White, who wrote a web article titled "What is Servant Leadership?" Right, a philosophy for people first leadership, and this is something that she actually wrote in February of 2022. So she states servant leadership is a leadership style that prioritizes the growth, well being, and empowerment of employees. And I think that's powerful because there are a lot of managers who don't empower their employees to do better, empower their employees to not only be better professionally, but also be better personally. And that is where empathy comes into play. Every week, I have a one on one meeting with my direct boss at Siemens. And every time we have that meeting, the first thing he opens up with and speaks about is my personal life. Not in a negative aspect, but he wants to make sure things are going well. He wants to make sure I'm spending time with my family. He wants to make sure that I'm not putting the job, the career, the work over what's most important, which is my family. And that is something that he exudes every time we have a one on one meeting. And the thing that's most empowering is that when he ends the meeting, a lot of managers state, "Is there anything you need from me?" Now, a lot of them say that as a knee jerk response, but when he says it, he really means it. He shows that action. So not only does he show action verbally, he also shows action physically as well. He's there when you need him, from an emotional standpoint and from someone to lean on and learn better as well. He's there to guide you in the right direction when you ask for his help. And also, he comes to you and asks you for your help. So he understands that servant leadership is a two-way street. I learn from my employees, and my employees learn from me. And I think he takes that and does very well with it. And I think it more so exudes the fact that he leads with emotional intelligence. He's not a leader that tells you what to do, tells you what tasks that need to be accomplished, and then leaves. He's actually there for you. Not just like I said emotionally, but his actions speak louder than his words. He is not a manager to just tell you what to do and then disappear for the rest of the day, never speak to you, never check up on you. That's not what he does. He is always constantly available when he can be, and he keeps his calendar open. So if there's anything that you need to discuss, even if it's personally that's affecting your position, your job, it stays between you and him. I respect that about him as well because he keeps things that are personal between who he needs to keep it between. If you tell him something, he keeps it between you and him because he values that openness and he values that integrity, from having that relationship. And I think that's key. There is one thing that I've seen, and I've had a lot of leaders in the past, uh, both authoritarian and servant leadership. A lot of times in the military, I had both. I had a hybrid, right? Because there are times where you need to be authoritative, but there are also times where you need to be servant leadership, right? So there are times where you need to lead by authoritarian variables and aspects, but there are also times where you need to lead by empathy. You need to lead by empowering. You need to lead by coaching. You need to lead by giving knowledge, and that's key. So one thing, there are a lot of positive and pros to servant leadership, but there's also some cons. And in addition, so Ida Lopez Gomez, who authored a web blog titled Servant Leadership, right? The definition plus benefits and drawbacks. And this is something that she wrote in July of 2022, so not too long ago. She states one con to servant leadership may be the perceived servant leaders are weak or ineffective is how they are perceived. Because they are not leading by authoritarian aspects, sometimes people take that as that leader's weak, that leader's ineffective in communication. Not understanding that they're leading by emotional intelligence, which is much more difficult to do than leading by authoritarian because it's very time consuming. Another con to servant leadership is the time consumption, the learning curve. The learning curve is long. The learning curve is not something that's quick. It's something that you have to work at. Soft skills, interpersonal communication skills, intangible skills that are necessary in servant leadership are very hard to garner. And when you garner those, it's not something that you can just do once and expect to hone your craft without doing any work. You have to constantly want to hone your craft, constantly sharpen those tools in the tool shed to make you a better servant leader. And I think that's key. And I think when I look at servant leadership and the ability to communicate and empathize, I think that leads to a leader who is very powerful because they're able to relate to their employees. And being a hybrid leadership is also great too as well. And sometimes you have to understand that the leadership that you exude kind of depends on the environment and situation that you're in. So in the military, it was a lot of authoritarian leadership, especially when you got out in combat into the battlefield, because it's a lot different out there, right? So it's very different than in the quote unquote civilian workspace where you can lead by that emotional intelligence. You can lead by that servant leadership. But some careers, like in the military, depending on what you're doing, you need to have both. You need to know when to exercise both. That's key. Knowing when to exercise authoritarian leadership and knowing when to exercise servant leadership. And that's key. And just to close, I mentioned emotional intelligence because I think that's one of the things that a lot of people miss when it comes to servant leadership. But emotional intelligence is key, right? Being able to not only maintain but manage your emotions, right, to the best, to understand what it means to empathize with someone, active listening and understanding their thought process and what they're going through to help you lead them better is key. So I appreciate your time. I wanted to keep it short, but I appreciate your time and thank you.